Bobby Marks spent 20 years in the Nets front office, but boy, he wasn't responsible at all for what the hell just happened. So we're not going to hold that against him. He's nice enough to join us here on Damon and Ratto. He's ESPN's NBA front office insider. And Bobby, boy, do we have an awful lot to ask you about. And hopefully we can pick your brain and use your experience to talk us through a timeline and a sequence of events that, spun the Warriors around as they got rid of a player that they weren't playing because they couldn't use him. They bring in a player who they hope to play because they like him, but because of medicals, they can't use him either. It's been pretty interesting out here, Bobby. How are you?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you so much. So let's just start with this. You're Bob Myers. The second you get the news that Gary Payton II failed his physical, what's your first move? Are you on the phone with your team? Are you on the phone with Portland? Are you on the phone with the NBA and Adam Silver and the powers that be because you think you were done wrong or deceived in some way? Talk us through what Bob Myers' afternoon might have looked like.
Yeah, I think you're probably on the phone with the league first, especially that here's a player that was deemed healthy, was playing, before the trade. Certainly he had the injury and the surgery and missed a bunch of time here. But
ironically, the team that he played before the trade was the Warriors. They played in Portland.
Yeah, so you've seen him up front. You think he's going to pass, and all of a sudden, he hasn't recovered what you thought from that surgery. And in the course of talking with him, it comes up that, I wasn't fully healthy, and there has been some medication, whether it be painkillers or whatever, that has basically got me through the last, month, playing here. So initially I'm probably calling the league first to find out what the ramifications are. I'm certainly calling Portland there. I mean, the hard part, and I said this on Friday, is once they did the deal and it's, you've got the trade deadline, there's no going back. So I'm sure the Warriors and Bob Myers are probably asking, hey, can this deal be amended? Can there be consequences instead of, draft picks going to, us sending draft picks to Portland? Can we kind of, take back as much as we can from the deal? And the league said no, right? There was no ifs, ands, and buts about that just because the deadline had passed already here. So now you've got to figure out, all right, what do we do next here? So do we they didn't pass him, but they still went through with the trade, but, lodge a complaint, and hopefully a month from now or a year from now that there's some type of compensation that's going to come back your way. I mean, that's where I kind of thought where it was going the whole way, because as you guys said, you traded a player in James Wiseman who has done nothing for you, was not going to do anything for you this year, likely, was probably not going to do anything for you next year, in the last year of his contract, for the hope that in a month from now or 2 months from now that Gary Payton, who you had last year, can contribute on the court more than James Wiseman can. So, yeah, it's one of those bizarre situations that you rarely see. I think because that if this was in July or August, yeah, we probably get a deal that's probably amended here because you can. But because, as I said, this deadline passed, there was basically you're either going to do it or you're not going to do it.
Based on the fact that, the Warriors really were not in a position to sort of just renounce the trade and then get Wiseman back and then not use him anymore, the question does arise, what is Detroit getting and what is Detroit looking for in him that the Warriors either never saw or couldn't use?
That's a good question, because when the deal got announced on Thursday, there were so many moving parts that you really kind of, you're really thinking about, all right, Gary's going to Golden State, Sadiq Bey is going to Atlanta, and then all of a sudden you kind of either that night or I think I might have woken up in the middle of the night thinking, well, wait a minute, what does Detroit need 4 centers for, right? You already got Jalen Duren, you've got Isaiah Stewart, Marvin Bagley here, and you're taking a flyer. I mean, that's probably what you're thinking, but what's the body of work you're basing it off of? Is it the 3 or 4 games at the University of Memphis, what you saw, periodically in Golden State, and for a guy in Sadiq Bey that actually helped you. You rarely see a team trade a wing for a big. I mean, that's what Detroit did here, and they're hoping that, you know. I mean, I thought Duran's a good player, and I thought he's their center of the future here. But I guess they're hoping that, you know, at least in the next, you know, 20, 25 games, or maybe even into the summer, they have a better understanding, and it's a low cost option. But as I said, it cost you. It wasn't like you just traded a second and you got him. You traded a good player in Sadiq Bey for him.
Bobby Marks from ESPN here with Damon and Ratto. So it's going to take a long time probably for the dust to settle on all of this. But when the league comes back with whatever they conclude, what do you think that is? What actual punishment could Portland be looking at if it were determined that they were less than forthright in this negotiation? And I don't imagine that there's going to be any element of anything that actually helps the Golden State Warriors in that punishment.
No, I mean, not released right now. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you'll probably see some type of fine. You know, maybe, you know, Golden State's awarded a second-round pick out of this. Maybe they get two. We saw it way back when, and Jeff Green had gotten traded from Oklahoma City to Boston. This was, I think, 2011, 2012, and there was, you know, a heart issue, and, you know, wasn't disclosed, or, you know, where the Thunder doctors did not detect it, and it came up in the Celtics physical with him, and Boston was able to get a second-round pick out of it. I think that's what you're going to do. You know, Portland will argue, hey, wait a minute, you know, this guy was healthy. We traded him. We saw him, you know, the day before here, and Golden State will argue, yeah, he was healthy, and the only reason why he was healthy because he was basically on painkillers to kind of mask the injury. And that part wasn't disclosed. I mean, like, you have to disclose everything. You know, I mean, I've been on so many trade calls, and you have to. If a guy had a sprained ankle a year ago, you're disclosing it. If a guy's on type of medication, you're disclosing it. You just kind of have to cover all your bases.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and the answer is technically unknowable, but I'd like your opinion on this. How can two NBA team doctors diagnose the same patient so differently? Like, how can one team be issuing a cleared to play, take a shot if there's discomfort, while the other team sees a multiple month layoff? And I'm not even accusing of one being right and the other being wrong, but that just feels like a massively wide gap, does it not?
Oh, it's massive. I mean, it's not like he came in with a sprained ankle and we're thinking, you know, he'll be back after the All-Star break. I mean, you know, it's anywhere probably from a month to 2 months. You know, maybe we see him in sometime in April, right before the playoffs start. No, there's a wide gap, and, you know, the Golden State's got tremendous doctors, a great medical department, and there's nothing against Portland here. But how does it go from one organization where they've deemed him healthy to another organization where he's been ruled out? That's the big thing. That's probably the unknown here, and, you know, eventually the league's going to investigate this, and we'll get a little bit more of an understanding. And, you know, when that is, as I said, it could be a month from now, or it could be a year from now.
Is not to beat this into the ground, but I'm curious as to whether this is a difference between two sets of doctors or two general managers who view a player's situation differently. I mean, because it was said more than once that Payton wasn't happy in Portland and wanted to go back to Golden State, which I can't imagine pleased Joe Cronin much. And so I guess my question would be, is this Joe Cronin saying, well, you're going to have to tough this out because we need you to play now, rather than a medical issue? Is this a general manager's issue more than it is a doctor's issue?
Well, I think I think it comes down to the player also. I mean, Gary's a tough player. I mean, he's, you know, as you guys know his story and everything, and he's earned everything. And I think you get to a point where there's probably some pressure for you to get on the court. You were already out, you know, however many games here, and how do I get on the court? You know, is there something, whether it be from a medical standpoint, medication that can kind of, you know, help this injury? I'm still feeling discomfort here, but is there something there? And I think if you're Portland, you're thinking, well, you know, is it the Total? Is it in a pill? You know, what's the long-term impact? If they feel there's no long-term impact, you know, you're going to play. So I think that's going to be, I'm just curious as far as when the league investigates and they talk to everyone involved here, you know, what if he did not take the painkillers? would he be cleared to play? I mean, that's it's at the end of the day, and from Golden State's perspective, as you guys know, is that he's not cleared to play. They've already ruled him out, and we move forward.
Knowing that the best time to get out of a bad investment is today, the second best time would be tomorrow, and the third worst option would be 2 days from now. How difficult is it still for a front office as proud as Bob Myers has run, like the Warriors have, to just admit defeat on a player like Wiseman, who they took number 2 overall in only 3 years?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it really is. I mean, we all could play Monday morning quarterback and look at who was drafted after or, throughout the draft here. And I think a lot of it had to do with, we could blame the COVID year where you basically had such little time to watch him play, scout, bring him in for, basically, interviews and workouts and all that stuff. I think him, limited body work at the University of Memphis. Yeah, I mean, the draft is one of the hardest things anybody can do. Or it's not an exact science. And if James Wiseman didn't go at number 2, he was probably going to go at number 3 or number 4. And there was going to be another general manager that took him here. So I think the one thing that you don't want to do is compound a situation where maybe you think that, there's an upside here, and now you're going to sign him to an extension or a long-term contract with the hope that he can evolve into that player, and now you're stuck with a bad deal here. And yeah, no one ever wants to, admit that you missed on a top 2 pick, but Bob in the front office is not the first, and they're not going to be the last here.
Bobby Marks, ESPN's NBA front office insider. Are you still a GM if you could put together a poo-poo platter of 5 second-round picks? I mean, come on, that's insane.
I can't believe that Portland got 5 second-round picks, I guess, right, for Gary and part of that deal here. So, yeah, it's interesting how it all evolved, and we all move on. And I think it's a good lesson. And I know it's hard when there's a deadline involved here, but it'd be interesting if moving forward, if there's maybe this deal got done on Monday. Maybe we're amending it on Wednesday, and there's some changes here. But you guys have been around this a long time. Teams tend to wait until the last minute because they're waiting for the best deal, or they're waiting for the deal to evolve. Or maybe the league looks at it here in this situation here where maybe we do have a little bit of a gray area where things could be amended based on circumstance, situations like this.
What do you think will be the long-term philosophical ramifications league-wide for the utter failure of the Brooklyn experiment?
Oh, man, I think you have to be careful from a free agency standpoint. I think it's hard to build a roster. Listen, any of the 30 teams would have signed Kyrie and Kevin in 2019. If he had cap space, he didn't have to give up anything. I think how it works, and we've seen it in Boston with Pierce, Garnett, Ray Allen. We saw it in Miami with LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. Is that and we've seen it in Golden State. Like when you have your own homegrown players already situated there, and they know the lay of the land, they know the coach, they know the environment, they know the organization, they know the media here. That is almost like kind of a template for when you go out and sign a Kevin Durant or a Kyrie Irving. But when you bring in a James Harden in a trade, when you bring in all three that have so many different personalities here, it doesn't work. It showed it in here, and it's amazing. If there was never COVID, what would have happened, right? Like we would never know. But based on COVID, that Milwaukee series they lost in Game 7, Harden displeasure there, Kyrie, the whole situation, basically it was a perfect storm here, and Brooklyn basically kind of, ripped the Band-Aid off at the trade deadline, and if they weren't going to rip it off on Wednesday night or early Thursday morning, eventually they were going to have to do it in late June here. So, yeah, it's the benefit is that I guess you recruit 7, 8 first-round picks, and you've got a nice player. But as you guys know, stars win in this league. I mean, stars win in this league as far as at the end of games here. Brooklyn's got a nice team, but there's no star on that team. There's no Kevin Durant. You need a closer in this league, and they don't have that right now. And there'll be another team out there that thinks that they can, build a big three of maybe 3 free agents or 3 guys that are, not, from that same ilk.
Bobby, if the Suns, based on star power alone, have won free agency. Who do you think came in second?
Well,
or the trade deadline, excuse me. No, I'm sorry, trade deadline.
Yeah, that's okay. I would say the Lakers, but with an asterisk, because I don't know if they have enough time on their side. I liked everything they did. I liked the Vanderbilt, Beasley, Russell, Mo Bamba, that whole group there, basically Westbrook out, balancing the roster here. Now, the hard part is that LeBron's out.
They got the Hachimura early.
Saturday. I don't know if there's time enough on their side to get into the play-in here. They're going to have to basically go, I think, 19-9 here to make some noise here. And I think it might be more of a move that sets them up for the offseason here. But I do like what they did, but I wish, for their sake, they probably had another 25, 30 games.
Bobby, we like what you do, man. You make the basketball world smarter at some of these, interactions and how things come together and fall apart. And we thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Bobby Marks from ESPN, their NBA front office insider. I mean, he's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. He knows the league. He knows the talent. He knows the lay of the land.